Welcome everyone to CDO's magazine series of one-on-one interviews with key influencers, data leaders, and CDOs. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants, and I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Canada, working with the CDO magazine. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Tim Hoolihan, who is a practice lead for data and analytics at Centric Consulting. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here, Robert.
But one of the other things that definitely comes up with your knowledge of AI and ML and the generative models out there is the need to balance data security and compliance with a desire for open access for data and for the data analysis and insights. Any kind of thoughts on what you would propose or suggest to clients out there who may be struggling and maybe doing too much of one and not enough of the other?
Yeah, it is a tough question. It scares a lot of folks, and maybe rightly so. I'm familiar with organizations that have just said we're just simply blocking ChatGPT or these types
Right.
of things for via the firewall. Um, I think as a short-term solution, I understand that reaction. I always think like, well, then what's the user going to do? And are you almost incentivizing somebody to then move data out to a personal machine to then go into ChatGPT? So now you've
Right.
doubled down on the problem, right? They've taken the data outside of the safety of your machines and fed it into something like that. Um, so I think rather than that, having AI governance plan and group that does an evaluation and looks at these tools, the vendors are very, very quickly realizing like we have to say what happens to what you type into the prompt. And so I'll use a Microsoft example here, but I've seen this with other vendors as well, that if you're going to use an LLM within the Azure environment, there are pages that specifically guide you on this is how to set this up if you want this isolated to your own tenant so that no training data ever goes out and gets
Right.
reused by another organization, by OpenAI, by Microsoft, or anybody else. Um, Having that and understanding, okay, for our organization, that is necessary. And for other organizations, maybe it's not, right? I work with a nonprofit that does a lot of research with public data already in pulling together sources of data like
Yeah.
CDC and census data. There's almost nothing they're going to type into a prompt that's very sensitive. So to them, there's no reason to go to that expense, and they can just use the publicly available models and go right ahead for that. If I'm a law firm, I want to know that my contracts are not going into the public
Right.
ether, right? And so I'm going to look at that. So it comes back to that AI governance, and then really good user OCM practices, communicate that to users, train, reinforce, make sure they've got people they can go ask those questions to. That often, I think, as technologists, and I'm picking on our subset group. It's easy to say like, well, okay, we've got the policy, or it's a safe tool, and we check the box and then move on. But what happens to the person who joins 2 months later?
Hmm.
How do they know that?
Right.
And so it's a constant work to communicate that.
Yeah, training and communication. Just in the last couple of minutes, Tim, can you mention some of the best practices for developing a robust data strategy that aligns within an organization's overall business objectives?
Yeah, I think I really think it comes back to kind of where we started our conversation, that business value, and that's having collaborative environment with business stakeholders. Um, Ideally, that's where your best breakthrough should come from. And so I really think of a conference I was at last year that the keynote speaker did a nice job of walking through some historical examples of various discoveries around like diseases through history and things like that, and
Right.
how they were using statistical principles, but it wasn't statisticians who made the discovery. It was doctors, it was nurses, it was other folks who had local knowledge of the problem going on. That's how I think data groups have to think of themselves, right? Their job is to provide the processes, the tools, and the right questions, and to help drive and enable the folks in their group that are closest to value, and you're partnering to do that. everything about your strategy and maturity map should be in service of that higher principle.
I love the way you formulate the local knowledge. It's the local knowledge team, the business community team that has the SMEs, the subject matter experts that are key. So, your job as a consultative organization is to bring these great tools and technology, maybe some of the process, but really you bring it to the people there, and the people have that. So with that, I'd maybe like to end with a more of an understanding on how you would proceed, or how Centric Consulting proceeds on ensuring organizations have effective communication and collaboration between the business stakeholders and the technical teams throughout the analytics lifecycle.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think while we're an outside organization, I often try to teach those inside organizations to act like an outside organization, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's because, when we come in to do that, since we're doing that at a cost, we have to justify that. We have to lay out plans. We have to track status. We have to show you, where we're going at the end of the day, and how we're going to get there, and how we're doing along the path. And a lot of internal organizations struggle to do that. And so having, you know, I don't want to overblow it and say like everything has to be documented in telephone books of 10-year plans and all these type of things. That's not, I prefer a more agile, flexible approach. But having a roadmap, having a maturity model, and saying, here's the things we're good at, here's the things we know we need to be better at, and here's how we're addressing it. And here's what we're asking of you as our partners in the business to do it. And we want to meet regularly to hear how we're doing and whatnot. If you can really treat that as, that is not an internal relationship, but that is a client and service organization relationship. I think that type of communication helps to drive that, because not only everyone's resource constrained and facing those same problems,
Yeah.
but we're also working in an area that is just changing so rapidly, right? So maybe someone in our finance group will jump out and take offense at this comment, but like while accounting rules may change through the years occasionally and things like that, there's other fields that are a little more static and repeatable and those types of things. Especially when you get in these areas like AI and ML, just a day, a month, a week can make a huge difference in how we approach certain things. So I think that constant communication between partners is key.
Tim, thank you very much indeed. On behalf of the CDO magazines, we really appreciate you providing your time. And we hope that we get a chance to have you come back and share your knowledge and experience on data analytics, leveraging AI and ML models. So,
No worries. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate the conversation. And I hope your users got something out of it. Be happy to come back.
absolutely. And for our listeners, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.